Good morning, students. Is my voice clear?
Yes, sir. And screen is also sharing.
Fine. Thank you. Okay, so let's start. So last time we started up, I'm sorry, with the syntax analysis part. So we started our discussion by highlighting some of the important issues that needs to be handled during the development of the syntax analyzer or during the development of a parser. So number one issue which we have discussed that whenever we are parsing our tokenized input, so the parser should have enough intelligence that which production should be used for further expanding the non-terminal symbol on the right hand side. So which production to use? I mean, let's say in a generalized format. And the another issue which we discussed that which symbol needs to be picked for further expansion. It could be any arbitrary symbol, right? So that's the two things which language specification or the grammar rules can't highlight explicitly, right? So someone has to handle such type of issues at the level of implementation. Number two. Number three, we came across the very important thing which should not be ignored in any case. That is the ambiguity. So one has to make sure that whatever the rule in the form of a context-free grammar he is creating, that should be unambiguous. And what is now here unambiguous? That means that the parser should, I mean, represent the unambiguous representation of the program. It should have only one meaning of the program. It should consider only one particular meaning of the program. It's not that it is producing, it is assuming two different meanings. So that is a conflict. That is somewhat ambiguous here. So we'll put some more light on this concept of ambiguity, and then we'll shift to the first parser. Fine. So, like we discussed last time, that if I slightly modify my grammar like this, I mean the grammar of these digits accompanied by this addition and the subtraction operation. So, for this particular tokenized stream, I'm generating two parse trees. And we said, I mean, one of this representation in the parse tree is obviously correct, and the another one is incorrect. And we conclude that since, I mean, this representation seems to be fine because obviously when I'm representing this 9 minus 5 plus 2, so I should know, being a compiler or being a human, that where my brackets should be, right? And since this is my bracket, so I have to evaluate this part first, followed by this. So obviously this interpretation is incorrect. But the question is not here that which is correct or which is incorrect. The question is that the compiler is introducing these two representations. So that is something, I mean, the parser is doing such thing. So that is completely unacceptable. Fine, so we'll call this representation, I mean, as ambiguous. So the problem is with the form of the grammar. The grammar was written in a such a way, and you will see that it is creating the multiple interpretations for the same tokenized stream here. So one has to be very, I mean, one has to, I mean, put utmost care while designing the rules in the form of a grammar. It should be completely unambiguous. So ambiguity. So ambiguity in a grammar must be handled in such a way that it should not produce the multiple parse trees for the same string. Or in other words, it should not, highlight multiple meanings of the same program, right? It should not it should not introduce different flags for the same program, for the same source code. Hence, the way in which one writes the grammar rule is very important. That we cannot disregard simply. So how to handle the ambiguity here? I mean, the question is, if my grammar is ambiguous, that is fine. I found this grammar is ambiguous. So as we discussed in the TOC, that there is, ambiguity is completely undecidable. So what is undecidable? That means there exists no well-defined algorithm which should be followed for every time to transform the ambiguous grammar to some unambiguous grammar. But is it so that can't we always convert any ambiguous grammar to unambiguous? We can. So we have to enforce certain set of rules. We have to remember certain set of rules that will obviously facilitate us in producing the unambiguous form of the grammar here. So right now we are talking with respect to the ambiguity in the context of the arithmetic operators, like we saw with this example here. So as I said, ambiguity is very, overhead for us. It's simply awkward because the meaning of the program becomes it's very difficult to understand whether I should go for this representation of the parse tree or this representation. So compiler will assume like this. Must be resolved by enforcing certain set of rules here. So as I said, we have to obviously rewrite the grammar. We have to enforce certain rules of precedence and the associativity rules. I mean, as long as we are talking with respect to, let's say, arithmetic operators here, we did not jump to the programming language ambiguity here right now. So as long as if my rules are including these arithmetic operators, so let me introduce certain rules with respect to the precedence, associativity, or you can say the BODMAS rule, which we have seen a long time back in mathematics here. So that obviously will not create the ambiguity. So I'll write the grammar keeping in mind these rules of the precedence and the associativity here. And as I said, there is no well-defined algorithm. So infeasible to transform an ambiguous grammar to an unambiguous form by some well-defined algorithm. So associativity rules, first focus on it. So we are completely familiar. I mean, what is associativity rule? So if I would write, such statements, let's say this assignment operator with respect to this. So here I need to enforce the associativity rule. So I'll say, associative will come into picture that this equal to must be captured by this or this here. Fine, this thing. So since we know that this assignment operator is obviously the right associative operator here. Fine. So this has to first evaluate and followed by this needs to be evaluated first. And we should know where the brackets needs to be kept here. And accordingly, we have to design the grammar rules. So like I said, if an operand has an operator on both sides, like in this case, let's assume, so the side on which the operator takes this operator is considered to be the associativity of the operator. And we all know that this multiplication, modulus, addition, and this subtraction, these are all left associative operators, whereas this exponential and this assignment are our left associative operators. And again, in this example, just like we consumed, so we should know, because now with respect to this particular operand, so it should know that here the brackets should be, because I am left associative, right? I should not go here. And then accordingly, this should happen. And one should keep this thing in mind while designing the rules here. So I'll say, let's say grammar to generate the strings with the right associativity operators here. So this is one just example. I said first any letter will come, which the further definition of the letter is this. Fine. And after that, I'm just including the assignment operator, and here I'm writing here, right? And every single time this is going to recursively call if I'm going to expand this and this. And obviously, right can also take a single letter also, if I do not need to further expand this. So now this ambiguity could be resolved by, we have designed the grammar in such a way that we know the associativity rules with respect to this operator. And hence, we are handling the ambiguity here. So the form of the grammar is very important, students. Let's take few more examples. So this was with respect to the associativity. In the context of arithmetic rules, we have to also enforce certain precedence rules here. So again, just as an example, this expression has two different interpretations. Let's assume by your parser, because obviously it is going to construct two different parse trees. So one parse tree will give you the representation like this, and another will give you the representation like this. And we all know that this one is the acceptable and this one is not the acceptable. And how we are going to achieve that? Because that something is going to be captured in the rules of the grammar here. So precedence rules will determine the correct interpretation captured by your grammar rules. Fine? Up to this point, guys. So these are the rules which will actually facilitate us in resolving the ambiguity here. If someone is, allowing himself or herself to remember these kind of rules and accordingly construct the grammar. Let's take few more examples with respect to these operators. So we have one grammar, which I'm explicitly saying this is the ambiguous grammar with respect to this addition, multiplication, and these parentheses. So let's say, we have constructed one parse tree for this 3 plus 2 plus 5. And similarly, we have one more parse tree for 3 plus 2 times 5 here. Are these correct interpretation? Is it correct interpretation? First of all, come on guys, yes or no on this? Is it correct parse tree? Is it the correct interpretation? Yes or no, guys, at least. No. Why?
No, because it's right associative, the left one. And
yeah, so it is not enforcing the associativity rules. So that should be evaluated first, right? Similarly, here it is not simply following the precedence order, let's say with respect to the bottom. So both are incorrect representations. Again, if we go back into the TOC, both are correct interpretations as far as we are handling the concerns related to the TOC. Okay, both are simply, generating the parse tree with respect to these tokens. But parser says I need the correct interpretation. That should resolve the ambiguity here. So what I did, just as an example, so we just introduced the unambiguous grammar for the earth. So we, being a programmer, we should know where exactly is the ambiguity here. So we should rewrite the form of the grammar. So we rewrite the form of the grammar. And now we constructed the same parse trees, because that is allowing us to do the same here. Right now, there are still some other issues related to the grammar. But since I just enforce the associativity rules and the precedence rules to make this happen in a correct manner. But there are still some other issues with the grammar that we'll see later on. But right now, we are just focusing on the rules of the associativity and the precedence, that how we are going to make it happen. Fine, guys. So here, up to this point, we have seen the ambiguity with respect to the arithmetic operators. Now let's see the actual ambiguity which can come in our path while dealing with the programming language constructs. Fine, so, and how to resolve such ambiguities. And obviously, there is no well-defined algorithm, so one should know what exactly is the context and the meaning of those operators or those programming language constructs in order to come up with the unambiguous form of the grammar. So let us take few examples with respect to the programming language constructs here. This is very well-known problem, the dangling else problem. You may or may not have seen prior to this. So, I mean, the name itself indicating the meaning here. I mean, whenever there are multiple if statements in your source code and a single else. So generally we get confused that the else part does not get a clear view that I should go with which if here. So it's completely not known that else is related to with which if part. So we call such problems as dangling else problem. And that is something we are dealing with the ambiguity here now. Now, how to handle this? So again, just as an example, if you will look at both these interpretations, so according to you, which one is right or which one is simply incorrect here? So we have if, multiple ifs, and single else here.
Sir, both are correct.
Both are correct. Exactly. So, I mean, because I am using the correct, the block structured, I mean, I have written using some scope here. So this if is else is related to this, and still I am also following the proper structure. So this else is related to this particular if here. But guys, rule says if you are not following such structure, let's assume your test cases are written just line by line, then you may get confused that which else part is related to which if here, when there are unequal number of if and else. Programs. So when there are multiple ifs and some else here, so how one should relate the else is related to which if part here? Any idea up to this point? Any answers, guys, on this?
Sir, actually, we missed your voice a little bit. So could you please repeat?
All right. So again, there is an issue of voice. So my question is, considering that someone has not written the program in this manner, like this clearly seems that else is related to this if, and this interpretation of the program is saying else is related to this if. But assuming that someone has not following this accurate representation, and there are multiple ifs in your source program and some else here. So how will you come to know that which else is related to which if part? I hope the question is understood now.
So you associate the else with the closest if.
Yes. So the default principle is that always we have to relate the else with the closest then or the closest which part here. And that principle we are going to follow for writing the unambiguous form of the grammar. Fine. So let us see now. So first of all, let's capture the ambiguous representation of the grammar. Suppose this is a grammar, this is some rule which says statement is, first of all, this keyword will come, followed by some expressions. This then is again a keyword, and again we have some statement. Fine. And here the else part is not there. And here in this, it has another representation, if expression, then statement, and it also including the else part also. This is the grammar which is saying this. Now we are calling beforehand, this is ambiguous grammar. Now, just tell me what exactly is the meaning of this statement here. I mean, we just, let's assume this is one tokenized stream, which we are getting from, let's say, lexical analysis. Can you relate which if is related to which else, or which else is related to which then part here? So suppose, so this is a statement, if some expression E1, then if some expression E2, then S1, otherwise else execute statement S2. Now, we have to identify which else are related to which then here. So if I'll say this part will get executed true, fine, then obviously this will get executed here, fine. I mean, then if E1 gets true, then obviously this will get true here. But let's assume if this part is your false, then which one should I get execute? Which one should get executed, guys? My question.
Sir, it's ambiguous.
It's ambiguous. I mean, I cannot say either I am going to consider else part, or I mean, I'll simply does not execute anything. Because as far as rule is concerned, this else should be related to the closest then, not this if here. Fine. So this should be related to this. But unfortunately, this specification is not actually captured by this form of the grammar. Fine. So if you will answer me, okay, sir, if this is fault, nothing will get executed. But my again question is, how have you captured this? Because we have to think with respect to this grammar. So grammar is not capturing the same thing here. Now, again, I was saying that the form of the grammar is very important. That what exactly do you want that you have to return in, I mean, in the form of the grammar as it is. So let's rewrite the grammar then, so that it should actually capture the rule, that the rule says that match the else with the closest then here. My job is done. As long as we have unequal number of ifs, else's, and thens, or ifs and then here. Fine. So now again, let's talk about the ambiguity again with respect to the parse tree representation. So one representation is this with respect to this tokenized string, and another representation of the parse tree is this. Now, assuming we know the rule, so which one is the correct representation? Guys, come on, respond to this. Which one is the correct representation? Come on, follow the simple rule.
In this case, both are correct.
Oh, come on. How can we both be correct? We said the rule is that match the else with the closest then part.
Okay, sir, then the lower one is correct.
And the second one is correct. Oh, sorry. Then the second one is correct. Obviously, this is incorrect. I mean, as far as we are dealing with the parsing part, if we are dealing with the TOC, then obviously we'll say both are fulfilling our need because both are deriving the same string. But we have to now come up with the unambiguous correct representation of our program as per our rule here. But compiler does not have intelligence to figure out which one is correct. Compiler says, give me only one single representation. And what exactly that means? That means that just rewrite the form of the grammar in an unambiguous way, so that the parser can generate only single parse tree. So the question which we need to answer here, whether this else is related to this statement or this else is related to, sorry, this particular then here. So obviously this is the correct representation here. So how we are going to resolve the ambiguity? Because as we said, we know the rule. The rule says that the match the each else with the closest previous then, the previous one. And subsequently, we have to rewrite the grammar in the appropriate form. I think this is clear to all of you up to this point. And now we'll construct our grammar one more time. So what we are going to say, we are going to capture the same rule, and we'll say, let's start with our grammar, that our statement is going to include two parts. One is match statement and another one is match statement. And being a human, I must tell you what exactly we are going to write in these guys. So both consider as non-terminals. Match statement. So match statement is going to include the equal number of then and else. Fine. Equal number of then and else's. Then obviously the problem will not happen. And the unmatched statement is going to include unequal number of else and then part here. And in this way, we'll handle both the things. Fine, guys? So let's define first what exactly is my match statement. So obviously it has to start with an if keyword expression. And as soon as we hit that then part, fine, we should say that the next part should be a match statement, because now this part is going to include equal number of then and else. Then, and this then is now related to this else part here. And finally, the else part should also include the match statement. Now, what does it mean? It means as long as these two guys' match statements are equal, I mean, they are considering the equal number of if, then, and else. So obviously, this will get related to this part here. Agreed on this point, guys? So that is why we are calling it as a match statement. If I want to further include the if, else, then part in these two guys here. Fine, students. And the another possibility is that my match statement can also include the other symbol also. Now, this other definition could be anything. It could be any expression, it could be any operator, it could be anything apart from this if else statements here. Fine, I could have written here simply this guy also. Fine. So anything. I mean, that's why we are generalizing it. Rather than writing if and else part, we are writing others here. And then only it is also matched because we have equal number of else's and then. You can see. Fine, guys. I think match statement is clear to you. Any question, any comment up to this point? Fine. So let's look at now what exactly is unmatched statement. So we said beforehand that it is going to include the unequal number of else's and then part. That's unmatched statement. So I'll say my unmatched statement first definition obviously needs to start with the same prefix, that is if expression, then part will come. And doesn't matter now, I have to make it unmatched. Fine. So it could be any statement. It could be match statement. It could be else unmatched statement because I don't have the else part here. Fine. So as long as I do not have equal number of else's, then this itself is making the complete statement as unmatched statement. Fine, students. And another representation is, let me assume that if expression, then this time I am making it as a match statement. So I am assuming here equal number of else's and then. And in order to make this guy as match statement, obviously I have to write here else here because then only this guy will become related to this guy. I have equal number of else's and then. Because obviously this guy is going to include equal number of then and else, but I have to write the else part by default. Otherwise, this will not relate it to. And after that, I have to completely make it as an unmatched statement. So I have written here, instead of statement or match statement, I have written here unmatched statement, which itself is making this entire statement as unmatched statement. Fine, students. So now the whole thing is we have rewritten the form of the grammar, which is completely, capturing the rule which we have stated that match the else with the closest then part. So the equal number of then and else's should be there with respect to the match statement. Fine, guys. Any question up to this point? Anything which you have not understood? Any comment?
Sir, in the last unmatched statement, I have a doubt. Like, can't we have another expression which is saying if expression, then unmatched statement, else matched statement, something like this?
This will also fulfill that need. See, my goal is what? My goal is I have to introduce another representation of the unmatched statement. Fine. So what I did here, I simply said that let me make this part first matched, and after that I am making unmatched statement. So what you are saying that would be fulfilled by this complete process, automatically. No?
Okay, sir, like, I could not get it. How, like,
So
like,
what I'm saying,
if like my argument is like if in the most last most expression unmatched equal to a second argument, if you interchange unmatched statement and matched statement, wouldn't it create another rule?
so are you saying that just replace it with the match statement?
Yes, sir. And the above
No, no.
unmatched
So
with matched.
let me answer this argument first. So I'm saying if I'll
Sir, your voice has gone.
voice audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so my response to your argument is that if I completely replace with this unmatched statement with the match statement, this obviously will become whole match statement. And that is obviously not our goal. Now, you can respond now again.
Sir, like actually, what my yes, I understood that this will make it a match statement. I am asking if it will be interchanged. Like I want, like I am speaking. If expression, then unmatched, else
Understood.
matched. Yeah,
Understood. So
yeah,
my response to that if this guy will become unmatched, then this else will not get associated with this then. Right? Try to understand. If I will write here unmatched, then this else cannot be associated with this then.
got it, sir. Thank you so much.
Simply got it, or are you saying for my sake?
No, 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 sir. No, like,
Because
seriously got
if
it.
I have to make it match statement this much part, so at least this part has to be match statement, then only this else will get related to this then. Making sense?
Yes, sir. Makes sense.
Fine. Any other questions apart from this, guys? Anything which you have not understood? So this is how one has to resolve the ambiguity, knowing the rules which you are incorporating in your, actual language constructs here. Fine. So now this is the thing which we have to discuss up to this point here. So resolving the ambiguity is not an implementation issue. Let's be clear it. Resolving the ambiguity is the issue that needs to be handled at the context-free grammar. That means at the language specification level. So parser says, I cannot handle this at the implementation. Give me the correct form of the grammar. Then only I'll give you the correct interpretation. Fine. So let's try to understand which is the implementation issue and which is the language specification issue. So now, guys, can anyone acknowledge, okay, is my voice better so that I can proceed? Otherwise, I'll rectify this issue because otherwise there is no sense. Is my voice fine?
Yes, sir. Like when it goes away, we'll tell you.
Yeah, just let me know. So let's start with now the actual parser. So in the rest of the sessions now, we'll see wide varieties of different parsers that one can construct or one can learn how to construct these parsers. And we'll discuss the complete logistics of each parser. We'll discuss how to implement these parsers, and we'll discuss subsequently what are the limitations of these parsers, because those limitations will actually motivate us to go for the rest category of the parsers. Otherwise, there is no fun or there is no motivation to study the rest of the existing state-of-art parsers. So let's start here. So as we discussed as a part of introduction, that parsing is nothing. It's just a technique of finding whether a given string can be generated by the language specified by the grammar. But this notion is only restricted as long as we are manually creating it. We have to do certain more things with respect to the compilation and with respect to the parsing that we have seen. So parsing has two categories. One is the top-down parsers and the another one is the bottom-up parsing. So initially we'll jump to the top-down parsers and then we'll see a huge wide variety of the bottom-up parsers here. So as of now, top-down parsing, in top-down parsing, we very well know that the construction of the parse tree will initiate from the root node. That means from the start symbol of the grammar, and it will go on proceeding towards the leaves, which we actually call as token or the terminals. And our internal nodes would be the non-terminal symbols of the grammar. Whereas in the bottom-up parsing, the whole procedure is reverse. So the construction of the parse tree will be from the leaf nodes, will be from the tokens. Fine. And it will proceed towards the start symbol of the grammar. Fine. So in top-down parsing, we generally say that if I have started my construction of the parse tree with the start symbol of the grammar, and if I end up in somehow, if I end up in constructing, in generating the valid stream of tokens from left to right, so I'll consider it as a correct parse tree. Whereas in the bottom of parse tree, what exactly happens that we have n number of tokens at the bottom, and we have to generate the tree like this from bottom to top. And if we'll end up in constructing the tree in a bottom up fashion, and if we'll end up in generating the start symbol of the grammar, that way we'll say that it is a valid parse tree. So the procedure is completely reversed in the bottom up parse. So we'll see in detail when we'll actually deal with the bottom up parsers here. So this was the example which we have seen earlier also, with respect to the derivation, with respect to the generation of the parse tree, and with respect to that each and everything is the sentential form of the grammar here. Fine, students? So now let's start with the top-down parsings here. So first, we'll again recall the issues, and those issues will motivate us to actually move towards our first parser. Now, the construction of the parse tree, as I said, is done by starting the root labeled by start symbol here. And we have to repeat these following two steps. And now you need to understand these two steps with respect to the parsing here, guys, not with respect to the TOC. Let me clear this thing, because you need to handle the issues here with respect to these two steps. So it says repeat the following two steps. It says that at a certain node, labeled with certain non-terminal symbol, let's say A, we have to select one of the productions of A and construct the children nodes. So can anyone able to visualize what exactly is the issue which one has to face here at the first point? Come on, guys, quickly on this. Yes.
When A is on the left side and has multiple possible variations.
So what exactly you are saying, that which production should be chosen here? Fine. So being a human, I am not supposed to decide. My intelligent compiler or parser has to decide this. And that's where the parser will now jump here and find the next node at which the subtree is to be constructed here. And which is this issue here? Find the next node in which the subtree is to be constructed. Come on, guys, we already discussed this thing. Now we are discussing with respect to the parse tree. So this issue is which production to be chosen? And this issue is which find the next node at which the subtree is to be constructed. Come on, guys, recall. We just discussed this issue in the last session. So last session, didn't we discuss which symbol should be further expanded? Right, which non-terminal should be expanded. So this is what it's saying, that find the next node at which the subtree is to be constructed. Fine, so these two issues needs to be resolved by your respective parsers now. Fine, so let us see quickly again. I mean, through some motivation example, which I have captured from your textbook, that this is one grammar which is capturing the specifications of the Pascal type information. I mean, the Pascal programming language type information. And the rules are like this. So these are your non-terminals, type and simple. And these are your tokens. These are your terminal or token symbols. This exponential operator, these, open parentheses, ID, array, of, int, and dot symbol. I mean, don't actually understand this, just understand these are my tokens here, where P is these my two set of productions and type is my start symbol of the grammar. And suppose if I have to parse this tokenized input stream, and the tokenized input stream says array, open parentheses, num, dot, num, close parentheses of int here. And this is the grammar we have. And let's suppose right now we have some conventional parser which will start its execution. So what it will do, it will take the start symbol of the grammar type and it will simply expand this non-terminal with one of its production rule, that is type is deriving symbol here. Fine. And then now next step says that I have only one possibility to further expand this non-terminal. So I have these all possibilities here. Either I can expand this to int, I should expand it to char, and I should expand it to this thing, that is num, dot, num. So what should I do? guys, because as I can see that my look at pointer, I mean this array, is not matching with any of these symbols which it is going, I mean on which the right hand side where the derivation is going to be started here. So that means this is completely the wrong step which my parser has taken here. So what should I do in this case? Come on guys, my question to you, what should I do in this case? At least you can answer this question being a human.
Change the rule used to expand type.
So what exactly is the keyword for that? So I have to backtrack, right? So here comes the procedure of the backtracking that needs to be handled at the level of implementation. That means I have taken some wrong expansion rule and I have to backtrack it, and I have to pick another rule, and the another rule which actually matches the specification at the first point here with the look at symbol and the first symbol here. And that exactly, assuming we know these things, so we exactly this thing now this time by doing the backtracking here. And now after that, again, my look at symbol will correspond to this particular thing that is simple here. So simple, I mean, I just choose this for further expansion, that simple is deriving num dot dot num. And finally, I did this part here. So these simple is also deriving integer here. And these set of tokens, if I scan it from left to right, this is giving me the tokenized stream, which I have actually parsed for the correct interpretation here. Now, the one important point here that it's very infeasible to implement the backtracking during the development point, as long as we have long specifications or we have something which cannot be handled at the level of implementation here. We need something more logical, which will not let us to take these wrong decisions here. We need some functions which does not allow us to take these wrong moves, which we have just taken here itself. The first point itself. That means we'll somehow move away from the backtracking and we'll come to the right part here. Fine, guys. So this is one example of the backtracking, this thing here. So now the thing here is that the backtracking, as I said, it's really a complex process for someone to implement. So if I know some parser, some automation, which can determine what is going to be my first character of the string produced when a production rule is applied, and comparing it to the current token in the input string, which is actually watching here, then it can wisely take the decision on which production rule to apply. So, I mean, let's visualize this. If I'll say, right now my look at token is pointing to the current token, that is array here. So it says that the parser must have the enough intelligence that this non-terminal does derive any symbol which actually matches with the first symbol, first look at token symbol array here. And obviously, we have to know that this is the actual production here. So if such sort of intelligence will be given to the parsers, then their life will become more simpler, rather than to implement the backtracking procedure. So here now something which exactly we need to jump right now. We need to understand which exactly is that thing. Again, I mean, simply I'll give you one more example. So suppose this is one generalized form of the grammar where start symbol is the S here. And this is the stream which I am, token stream, which I am supposed to pass. So suppose right now I started with this thing and I have only one option here, right? So I'll simply go for C, A, and D here. And after that, for A, I have two different possibilities. Now, as of now, human, I know exactly I am expecting the symbol A here, but as a compiler, I don't have the enough intelligence. So I have to make a call whether I should pick this or this. Fine. So that's the thing one has to understand here. So the intelligence should come that current look at symbol is pointing to the current token, and that token should match with the first symbol of the right hand side of that production here. If this is the case, let me pick that complete right hand side and I should expand with that symbol here. My job is done. Fine. So here, one function is coming to us which will actually automate this process, and that thing is first set calculation. Guys, so what is first set calculation? As the name is itself indicating the meaning, it is always going to derive or capture the first token derived by the right hand side of the production. Fine. So first of any x, for a grammar symbol x, it could be a terminal symbol, it could be a non-terminal symbol, or it could be a epsilon as well. Fine. So first of any grammar symbol is the set of tokens that begin the strings derivable from x. Yeah. Fine. Now, again, let's take its generalized format. So suppose if there is one production of this form, that A is deriving alpha, where alpha is any string of terminals or non-terminals. And obviously, this is a type 2 grammar. It has to be the non-terminal symbol. We saw the Chomsky hierarchy. Fine. And now the first of alpha, because now I need to capture the first token derivable by this alpha. Fine. So the first of alpha is the set of tokens that appears as the first token in the strings generated from alpha. So string of terminals and non-terminals. I mean, the definition of this alpha. So let's see a few examples, and this would be very much clear here. So again, the same grammar in which we are very much clear what are my non-terminals, what are my terminals, what are my tokens, and what is my start symbol. And this is the thing which I have been given to us, the production rules. So if I need to invoke this function first on this category simple, so first of simple, so that means I have to check what this guy is deriving here, the first token. So first of simple, it is a non-terminal, so I have to look at the left-hand side and see what exactly these guys are deriving as a part of first token. So first token is itself the int completely, as it has been given that int is a terminal. Similarly, here in the another case, the char is again the first token itself in the entire right-hand side. So char will also come in its first set. And this is a complete set of, I can say, terminals in which the first token is only num here. This is my second token. I'm not worried about that second token. I'm just worried about the first token. So these are all the first set of tokens in the first of simple here. Fine. And similarly, the first of, let's say, one more num dot dot num here. So this time you can say it is not a non-terminal, it is a string of terminals here. I mean the complete alpha. And obviously, I do not need to look at the production rule because this is not something non-terminal. So I will simply look what is my first token here. So this is my first token, that is the num. Now, how these things are going to facilitate us while doing the parsing here? Suppose at a certain point of time, I came across this interpretation of the parse tree. Let me assume type is deriving simple here. And I'll assume that my input stream is saying that my lookahead token is pointing to the char symbol. Lookahead pointing is to the char symbol. Now I have to make a decision. The parser has to make a decision whether I should go for int production, char production, or num dot num production here. So it will simply compare the current lookahead token with the list of the first set of tokens here. And the set of the tokens is char here, so it will exactly capture that complete production rule here. The job is done here. I hope this is understood to some extent. Any questions, any comment for the calculation of the first set and the actual motivation, which we are discussing right now for the parsing here?
Sir, could you
Fine.
repeat the last thing once more?
Yes.
So the last thing.
This one?
No, sir. What you wrote in red.
This parsing. Yeah. So what I was saying, let's assume at any point of time, this is what your parse tree is looking like, right? Type is has derived the simple. This is just one partial parse tree. And now the parser has to decide whether I should pick this production to expand for expansion, this production, or this production to expand. So parser says, I don't have innate intelligence, give me the first set. So parser will say, give me the first set of the simple here. So first set of simple is this int, char or num. And my look-ahead pointer in my input stream, I mean the rest of the input stream, let's suppose it is like this, char, id, num. This is the rest of the input which I'm going to parse here. And the current look-ahead token is pointing to the char. That means that parser is expecting char. So that means simple has to be expanded with that production rule whose first token is char here. So that is why it has extracted this production rule. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Fine. So let us see a few more examples which will actually facilitate us how to calculate the first set of any non-terminals or any terminals or any arbitrary combination of these. Let's suppose this is the generalized form of the grammar. So we are slightly deviating away from the parsing for a while, and we are learning right now how to calculate the first set. Fine. So let's calculate the first set here. So assume this is the grammar here, in which these are your non-terminals and these are your terminals, which are actually tokens. P is the set of these all production rules, and S is the start symbol of the grammar. Now quickly tell me, guys, what is my first of A here? Let's start with the easiest one. What is my first of A? That means I have to look at the first token, which is derived by this. That is the A itself. Fine. So one production rule is giving me the first token A, and there is another production which is deriving epsilon. So what is that first of A? In that case, it can also derive the epsilon. So this is my first of A. Similarly, my first of B is nothing but the first token is B itself and epsilon. Similarly, my first of C is nothing but C here only. And first of D again is here D comma epsilon. And for E, it is again E comma epsilon here. So simple. I mean, just the first token, because the production rule is itself on the right hand side is only including the first token itself. But there is one more production rule with related to the epsilon as well. Fine up to this point. Now, the bigger guy. How I am going to evaluate the first of S here? Because there are so many non-terminals on the right hand side. We just remember the logic that always I have to derive the first token which is derivable by this particular non-terminal A. So let me show you the principle here. So how is going to be evaluated this? So this is something, let me write in separate A, B, C, D, E. And I am supposed to calculate the first of S here. Fine. So let me show you that, later on. So first of S is simply, I'll write here that first of anything which is coming inside the A, B, C, D, E. Right? This is what I'm going to write. First of A, S equals to first of A, B, C, D. And now what I am going to do here, that first of A, B, C, D means that what is the first token which is derivable by this A here. Fine. And what is the first token which is derivable by A? We have already evaluated, that is A here. Fine. But if I'll say A here, but it is also deriving the epsilon. That means I can simply replace this non-terminal with the epsilon, and I'll actually get the resultant production on the right hand side is B, C, D, E. Fine. That means here the first of S is equivalent to first of A, B, C, D, E, and first of A, B, C, D, E is equivalent to first of A minus epsilon. Fine. And first of A is we have already evaluated, that is A and epsilon. So this part will give me the A only. I have discarded the epsilon because of this. And now again, first of S is equivalent to again first of complete BCDE. Let me write here for you people. And first of BCDE means anything which is coming in the first of B, however, minus epsilon again, just like the previous. And first of B again is B and epsilon. So obviously this part will give me the B here. And finally, now, because I also replaced with this epsilon, so what else is pending? First of CDE here. And first of CDE is nothing but again first of C minus epsilon, right? But first of C is not deriving epsilon, so that's why we did not write here minus epsilon. But we can say first of CDE is equivalent to first of C minus epsilon. So this part is only giving me C here. And that's where now I could replace this C with the small c, and I should write here one more time. First of small c, that is token C, and D and E is what is first of, I'm so sorry, first of small c. I mean, if I'll further evaluate it, this will become something like this. And first of any terminal is nothing but first of any token is the token itself C. So that means I have to concatenate A, B, and C here. And that is my final answer for the first of S here. And this is all what we have seen. If I'll rub this, I mean, so now you can ask me any questions if you have not understood anything. I am stopping here, guys. Sorry for taking your extra time on this. So I am stopping here, guys. Now you can ask me any questions up to this point. Anything which you have not understood.
Sir, I want to discuss like up till now the discussion that we have had, backtracking is not completely eliminated. Now, like we'll have to incorporate some changes in the grammar also.
No. Backtracking is eliminated. So we are not following the path of the backtracking. We are following the path of the first sets. If someone knows the concept of the first set, why he will go to the path of the backtracking?
Sir, but
is
because
this point valid, first of all?
No, sir. Like I have doubt in this one.
Okay. Please tell me.
Sir, like for example, if I have a stream of tokens, so using first set, I will come to know that how to parse the first token. But maybe it is possible that after parsing the first token, there is a number of combinations for the next tokens that are going to come. So how
right, agreed. So again, that thing is also going to be resolved by the first set.
Sir, but like if we do like this, so can't it be possible that the like the grammar that you have discussed up till now, like I am just asking that we'll have to incorporate some special changes to make the grammar support first set principle, like, or is it like what we have discussed, unambiguous grammar that
right. So unambiguous grammar obviously is not going to deal. Obviously is going to deal with our specification. So first we have to ensure that the right form of the grammar we should have. And the right form of the grammar is right now, whatever we have discussed, it should be unambiguous. And if it is ambiguous, then these principles will get applied. Fine.
Sir, just one more thing, sir. Like I am asking, like basically, we have discussed a little bit about like how to make a grammar unambiguous.
Correct.
So now I am asking, like this first set principle will help us to remove backtracking. But I am asking, like, I am feeling that the definition of unambiguous grammar that has been discussed up till now will not like help us to incorporate first set completely. Like there will be some problem. Like
what sort of problems? That's what I'm not understanding. I mean,
sir, like there is a stream of tokens and because like somewhere like
So can we discuss this with some example if it is feasible for you to give me right now? I'll just draw it.
sir, like
But
I'll think about it a little bit. Like if there is the doubt persists, then I'll let you know. Then I'll ask
still,
you.
yeah, I mean, I'm feeling very, I mean, low because I'm not able to answer your question.
No,
So
sir. Actually,
can
no.
you please highlight the exact question? Because as far as I can understand your question, your claim is that the grammar is unambiguous, but how this first set is going to create some problem. This is what you are saying, right?
Yes, sir. Like basically, what has been discussed up till now, like I don't get the complete intuition. Like that first set will be able to, the previous grammar will be able to support first set completely.
I mean, see, both things are independent. Let's see, because that's what your question is very independent with respect to these two different concepts. Even if you will give me the ambiguous grammar, please focus on this point. Even if someone
Yes,
will
sir.
give the ambiguous grammar, one can compute the first set of all non-terminals as well as terminals. There is no problem because first set calculation has to be completed automated in different function. So there is no relationship between the grammar and the first set problems. Give me any form of the grammar, whether it is unambiguous or ambiguous, I'll also compute the follow set. And if you will give me the unambiguous, I'll calculate the follow this first set. I'm not understanding what sort of problem you are mentioning here. Because as far as I can see, obviously if someone would expect the unambiguous grammar, and I will compute the first set. So I'm still not getting your question. Maybe you have noticed one problem and I'm not able to visualize. So that's what I'm saying. Can you visualize that problem explicitly?
No, sir. Like I think I got it, but like I'll need to digest the things, mas like.
So that's what I'm doing now. I mean, so what exactly is the problem?
Sir,
So yes,
I have,
yes.
sir, if in the first set, suppose there are two terminals which are same.
How is it possible that first set will include the two terminals same? It is not at all possible that the first set is going to include the two terminals.
Maybe it will be the grammar will be ambiguous.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So if that is the thing, we'll never include the multiple symbols in the set.
Okay, sir. Okay. I got it.
Suppose, let me write here. Suppose this guy is deriving A here. Why my stylus is not working? So suppose this B is also deriving A.
Yes, sir. I understood.
Fine.
Definitely.
This is what you're saying. So obviously, I am also replying to the previous guy. So first set will not create any problem. First set will say, I can compute the first set of A. I can also compute the first set of B. Doesn't matter to me because both are giving me the same tokens. What should I do? That issue you have to handle at the level of language specification. Your grammar is written in an incorrect way.
Yes, sir. Like exactly my point. Like now I got it.
Okay, this was your question. Yeah.
Yes,
so I also replied in a generalized manner. So there is no relationship between the first set and the unambiguous and the ambiguous. First set says, give me any junk set of the grammar. I hardly bother about that because my goal is to just give you the first set of tokens which are supposed to be derivable from the right-hand side of the production here. Right? Making sense, guys?
Got it, sir. Yeah, yes,
All right.
Makes sense.
Any other
Thank you,
doubt,
sir.
any other question up to this point?
Sir, in case of an ambiguous grammar, is there any particular way different than drawing the different possible parse trees and then examining? Is there any different way to determine whether a grammar is ambiguous or not?
Obviously, that thing we'll come to know very shortly once we'll jump into the first parser. So your question is that is there any other way apart from certain rules to find whether this grammar is ambiguous or not? This is your question?
Yes, sir, because right now we are drawing the parse trees and then actually looking into whether it is ambiguous or not.
Right. Even not by drawing the parse trees, one can easily estimate whether this grammar is ambiguous or not. Let me give you an example right now. Suppose if I don't know. My stylus has stopped working. Give me just a second. I'll just handle this. Suppose if you can listen my voice. Suppose if you will take one production that can I write right now? Let me see. Suppose if I will introduce one production rule, A is deriving A plus A, and consider this A as a non-terminal. Are you there? Whosoever has asked this question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
A is deriving A plus A. It's simply ambiguous here, because when I construct the parse tree, there are two options. Whether my parse tree will pick first A on the left hand side, and in another parse tree, it will probably pick the first A on the right hand side.
Yes,
Are
sir.
you getting what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I
Yeah.
answer your question?
Yes,
So
sir.
it is not at all required, but in few cases, right? That just by drawing the parse tree, one will come to know that your grammar is ambiguous. If there are multiple options on the right hand side available, one can know my form of the grammar is ambiguous. Is it relevant? Fine for you?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other doubt, guys, apart from this? Okay, guys, then I am stopping here. Thank you for joining.